Hello, government class. I've figured out how to actually video instead of just talk. Um, so hopefully this works. I did upload it for my seventh grade, and it worked. It uploaded for them, but none of them have watched it yet. But that was just about 15 minutes ago. So, see if this works or not. I didn't podcast you guys yesterday. I gave you guys your Supreme Court test to work on this week. Friday and Monday, I don't have anything for you guys. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully, get some family time, Easter-wise, even with just the people who are living in your house. Eat some ham, turkey, lamb, duck, whatever you eat for Easter. Maybe make some homemade bread. I think that's what we're gonna do here. So enjoy your Easter, and if you guys feel inclined, take some pictures, send some pictures, whatever. I'm sure I will probably put some pictures on there of my girls getting eggs and stuff like that. So enjoy the weekend. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about more of that wrap up of third parties. So we have this aspect of, in the United States, we have a two-party system. We're not multi-party. Remember, multi-party actually makes up more of the world than the two-party system does. There are, I think we said there's only like 12. Let me look it up. Like 12 parties, 12 places in the. Let me see. Yeah, there's only about a dozen nations that actually have this this two-party system. So what we started talking about though was the view of a third party and what they have on there. So if you guys are gonna follow along Nearpod, if you're not, just listen. That's fine. If you go to slide 20, you got this guy pushing his ears out because he was made fun of having big ears. It's Ross Perot. He's probably the most influential third-party candidate that we might have had. You might go back to that Bull Moose Party as being an influential candidate just because it was such an offshoot of the Republicans and so many people followed it. But in modern history, like let's say from my time, from 1985, Ross Perot really is it. He was like the original Michael Bloomberg. What happened this year, paying for everything, and putting his views out there. And he really did mess up the elections for George Bush. And he took votes away from him. And if you go to that the slide number 19, the one that I kind of went over and asked you guys to look at, you really see in the 1992 election and 1996 election, that yellow bar that's in the middle of the graph, that is the voting that Ross Perot and the votes that Ross Perot took away from both Bush and Clinton on these aspects. Especially in the 1992, you can see the impact he had on Republican voters. He took away from George Bush, and it was really truly the reason why George Bush did not win that election. He didn't take as many away from Clinton, but he definitely did impact George Bush, and this is old man Bush. But you can see as you go through, really the only other aspect of third-party candidates that took information or took votes away from people was that Bull Moose in the 1912 election. And you can see they took half of the Republican votes away. So third-party candidates are few and far between, and they try to get a platform out there that helps them get these votes. But you really see these ideas of third-party candidates falling by the wayside in the United States most of the time. Bernie Sanders just dropped out. Here's the thing. Bernie Sanders isn't a registered Democrat. He was running as a Democrat because he knew he can't win as an independent. Here's the problem that Bernie Sanders could possibly do if he has enough money to do this and to continue being in the campaign. He could run as a third-party candidate. He's an independent. So you see this progressive aspect, or this ultra-liberal side, where you might have Bernie Sanders run, and he ends up taking votes away from Joe Biden, who is going to be the Democratic nominee, and thus in turn electing Trump. So it's kind of a thing where the third-party candidate, especially the movement that Bernie Sanders had, could really take away votes from a Democrat. Now the thing is he's not going to take away votes from a Republican, because there's no one running against Trump. All of the well, there is, but he has gotten like 1% of votes, I think, like in most of the states and in most of the primaries. So Donald Trump is the Republican aspect. I don't foresee Bernie Sanders taking away votes from Donald Trump supporters or people who have voted for him before, just because of the platform he's running on. The healthcare for all, free college, all of that stuff. It really isn't something that you really look at as a Republican and having, okay? And that's what we're going to get into today, is this political ideology of people in this country and even in the world. You have these different political ideologies, and how you get to those is like usually a 4-step process. And you can change your political ideology as you go through the things that you live through, like this response to COVID-19, like what we have today going on. It might change the way people on the Republican side think, and even on the Democratic side think, on these liberal and conservative sides, where they might think that the national government totally blew the response to this, and they get away from the national government, saying that Republicans are leading it pretty much, and they vote Democrat for it for this next election because they don't like their response. You might see some states who have Democratic governors who totally blew their response as a Democratic governor, and you'll start seeing people vote Republican instead. So this election coming up this year was going to be interesting already, and it's going to be even more interesting with what is taking place at this moment and how it's going to impact the election. You will still have your people who are going to vote liberal and going to vote conservative just because that's what they are. But remember, those 42 million people on that pie graph that I showed you that were independents, that really makes the election. And really, if 42 million people come out as an independent in the voting age aspect, they're going to really truly influence an election more than people who are registered Democrats or even registered Republicans. So I kind of want to get into this political ideology that's on slide 24. You got this like unicorn sitting there, and you got communism and fascism as two clouds, and growing out of it is socialism, liberalism, and conservatism as you go from left to right. Now you have a couple of the parties that are on there: Liberal Democrats, Conservative Party, Green Party, Labor Party. You have these different Socialist National Party on the left. So you can see where the more socialism you get, the more closer to communism you get. The more conservatism with religion and those types of things, the closer you get to fascism. Now, we don't want socialism. We don't want fascism. We've seen this in history. We've seen this with Nazi Germany, Benito Mussolini in Italy, Stalin, and all these people, and all of those leaders that were in Soviet Russia. We like our democracy, and we don't want to skew towards communism or towards fascism. There are people in this country who would definitely love getting closer to communism with conservatism, or socialism. Or, I mean, I'm sorry, communism with socialism. I mixed it up, and fascism with conservatism. But for the most part, most people, I would probably say, in this country might skew towards socialism a little bit, might skew towards conservatism a little bit. And that's just because of the ideology that somebody has. So, we have different ones. You don't have to be just liberal or conservative. You could be an anarchist. You could, there's a couple more that you could really associate with. But the main values of these two are really brought up in the video, and that's on slide 25. Okay, and he talks about the difference between a liberal who values equality and a conservative who values liberty. Equality and liberty, two great words. Why not? Liberty meaning that you have freedom, equality meaning that you have a chance to further yourself in life. Liberty means you have the chance to further yourself in life also, because you have the liberty to do it. So, two good words to really put with either liberal or conservatives. But the thing is they have different views of what government should do, and how government should interact with the people that live within the boundaries of that country. So liberals, they've tried to rebrand themselves as progressives. We had this time frame in history, in American history, where we had this progressive movement, women's rights, totally lost my thought process. The African Americans movement, the movement for Latinos. You have all of these things for gaining rights to vote, gaining just rights in general, the suffrage movements, so forth and so on. Okay, that was the progressive aspects and progressive times. The thing is that liberals now, especially way left liberals, see themselves as progressives because they're working towards trying to get this free healthcare, free schooling, and all this junk, and they see that as a progressive movement. Historians and some people will argue that it is not, but let's not get into that. But they're trying to rebrand themselves as progressives during the time that we're in now, and bringing back this old progressive movement that was back then. So here are some of the things that liberals look at. Government can help solve problems. So we look to the government as being somebody or something that can help solve the problems that are going on within the country, whether it is gun violence, lack of health care, expensive schooling, cost of living is different in states for some people. Minorities are not being treated equally, so forth and so on. Okay, they look at government as a way to help solve that problem. They also want government intervention in the economy. Now, government intervention in the economy means that they are putting regulations on big business, pollution regulations, what you can plant as a farmer, if we have a stock of something, like those types of things with the economy, and they're regulating this economy that we have. The next thing is protecting the environment and protecting minorities. We saw one of the first things that Donald Trump did was roll back the government regulations that were put on the environment during the Obama era. You'll see that when we get to the conservative side, that this is something that conservatives don't want to see. They don't want government regulations. So we want this free business, this free manufacturing. So it's a totally different aspect. With minorities in place, we see the aspect of minorities with like lower education, lower healthcare aspects. I was reading, and I don't want to put this out there as fact. I didn't research it any deeper. Excuse me. I was reading that John Hopkins University did a study, and it said that it was like 60% of new doctors or something like that did not want to even get within 4 feet, 5 feet of an African American patient. They were reluctant to give them even like sedatives or medication for pain or anything like that. They actually thought that African Americans had a higher pain threshold than Caucasian Americans. I mean, I would love to see the statistics and the work behind that, to find those, to see if African Americans actually have a higher pain threshold than white people do. But that goes within the minorities aspects with liberals, that they're looking at something that they want to see minorities be lifted up more and given chances to further their education, to get out of inner cities if need be, and get jobs as CEOs and head coaches and in the NFL and MLB and like front office people, like all of these types of things, professional white collar positions that most African Americans do not actually have. And then they want a progressive tax system as liberals, meaning that higher taxes for people who earn more money. Simple as that. We went over that. They want to regulate big business. Like I said, go back to the environment, regulate big business. Hey, don't pollute. You've got to make sure you can't pollute. Gas mileage aspects in vehicles was a big thing that the Obama era did, to try to. It wasn't really regulating big business, but it was telling big business, hey, you need to, especially the car businesses, obviously, you need to make sure these cars can go farther and have better emissions and better gas mileage. And the last thing that they really look at is budgeting the defense budget, cutting it. They want to see the defense budget cut. They already think that we spend too much on defense. And we talked about this. And I remember when I put that pie graph up there, Dallas saying, hey, look how much we spend on defense. Could you imagine if we would just take some of that, not all of it, but some of that, and spend it on science and STEM activities and education and even transportation and stuff like that? You know, like how much different would our country be if we were not spending the billions and billions and billions of dollars on defense, but only spending billions and billions of dollars? So those are liberal views. Now on the flip side, you've got conservatives. Remember, they're looking at liberty. Okay, so the first thing that they look at is the aspects of our government are best handled by states and localities, and you kind of see that with Donald Trump and what he's doing right now. Governor Cuomo was asking for all of these ventilators, and Donald Trump was basically saying, hey, look, states are the ones that should be providing this. This is your healthcare systems, and it shouldn't be the federal government. So you have this aspect, and even the National Defense Act was something that he was reluctant to dive into and put and implement because of the next thing, which is seeing that government shouldn't be so big, that they want a regulated government where states have this ability to do this stuff instead. So we look at federalism there. They want a strong defense, totally opposite of the liberal aspect. And you can see this through Republican presidents who spend a lot on defense. And it's just their view. They want to be the biggest and baddest military in the world. Lower spending equals lower taxes. So if we spend less as a government, we don't have to tax as much. Makes sense. Problem is that when you have billions and billions and billions of dollars within the defense budget, we're still raising our national debt because we're not gaining enough money in taxes. And let's really put it this way: the last president to actually break even on the national debt during his time as president was a Democrat. It was Bill Clinton. So they might view this aspect as being something that the conservatives are looking at, but it's something that it's hard to achieve. No matter if you're a Democrat president or if you're a Republican president, Green Party, whatever you want to go with, it's hard to achieve that because you can't foresee the future on what take for instance now. If this happened when Bill Clinton was in as president, he would probably have to be spending a lot more money. So he would have actually added to the national budget instead of keeping it even. So, I mean, it could have been Donald Trump too. It could have been Donald Trump sitting in there as a president and saying, "Hey, look, I've lowered taxes, I've lowered our national budget, or broke even, me being as president." And then boom, here happens this pandemic, and he needs to dip into funds, and the national debt goes ballooning up. So it's hard to foresee the future of what is going to happen in a country. They are, and finally, against abortion. Their conservatives are usually a Catholic white people. It's really what they what they identify with. Catholic white people identify as conservatives more than anything. And you can see the aspect of religion with abortion in there. I don't think I really have to go into that much, but it's a process of being a conservative. Now, okay, the process of figuring out if you are a liberal or conservative as you are going through your life is called political socialization, and it's the way we figure out who we are politically. And please understand that I'm not telling you have to be liberal or you have to be conservative. You can be in the middle. I have a lot of views that are in the middle. I have a lot of views on abortion that are in the middle. I have a lot of views on gun rights that are in the middle. And I really don't identify with either side. I feel like if I would identify with a side, I might say I'm a little bit more liberal than conservative, but I do have conservative views on certain aspects. So don't think that you have to be liberal or conservative, okay? You can be in the middle. It's okay to be in the middle, even though, like right now, the country and our political movement is like, no, you got to pick a side. No, you can be in the middle. It's all right. And the four things that really, truly help shape the way you become either liberal or conservative, number one is family. Family's huge. And it's interesting because you might have deviant people in families where their family is totally conservative, but the one person is just liberal. They see liberal views. They identify with liberal views way more than conservative aspects. And we see a lot of times where that becomes with family fights. In fact, I will tell you, I went and I was riding my bike and I rode up to Bristol and I took that picture and showed you and tried to see if you guys knew Bristol School. My grandparents live directly next to Bristol School. So my grandpa's out and I stopped and talked to him. He is a staunch Republican, conservative, God-fearing, gun-blazing American. And we weren't talking about politics or anything at all. I was talking about how Grandma was doing and just, shooting the breeze with him and talking about the virus and, everything that's going on. And all of a sudden he just started talking about politics and talking about how we needed to vote out every Democrat, which, I mean, if you go back to the notes, would be a one-party system, and one-party system is not democracy. And I basically looked at him and I clicked my pedal back in. I told him, I love you, Grandpa, but I'm not talking politics with you because your views aren't the same as mine. It's my own grandfather. And my grandmother is conservative. My other grandparents are pretty conservative. I would have probably said when my mom was alive, she was conservative. I would even probably say my grandma, who just passed away from Germany, I would probably say she was more of the conservative aspect. Now my dad, he is more on the liberal side. So but he's like way more liberal than even I am. So I've kind of like learned family wise from both aspects and picking out the views of what I believe government should be and how we should work political parties and so forth and so on. So you're taking this mashup of both sides of your families and trying to figure out, hey, which one best suits my thoughts and what our world and what our country should be like. Number two is your social groups. So what race are you? What gender are you? Etc. Those types of things. What religion are you? Those aspects. They're huge because racial aspects and gender aspects usually put you on a certain side of the political spectrum. Doesn't mean that you don't have, let's say, African Americans who are more conservative than liberal, even though most African Americans are liberal. Most Jewish people are liberal. Most religious people, like I was saying with Catholics, they are conservative. So your social groups are huge on what side you pick. Number three is your education. Here's the thing with education, and it was brought up in the video if you guys watch it. Most conservatives think that teachers are all liberal because they're part of a union. Unions usually breed liberal people, so forth and so on. Which I will say that I have had liberal teachers. I know that they're liberal because of the things that they go over in class, but I've never had a liberal teacher or conservative teacher put their views, like, thrust them upon me, basically. I have had a teacher who was a religion teacher when I went to Teal for my year, basically push religion on everybody that was in the class. But I really haven't had anybody that has like given me non-factual information and tried to make me conservative or liberal. I pretty much, by the time I was in college, I had already decided where I wanted to be on certain things because I lived through aspects. I lived through Columbine, 9/11, those aspects, the recession, the 90s, and AIDS, and those all of these things, and it really put me already where I thought I would be. So that's one of the things, and a lot of times, the higher the education you get, the more sided you become, and that goes on which classes you take in those types of aspects. The final one I'll go over is your political conditions. What did you grow up in? So people who grew up more in like the Great Depression, the New Deal programs and stuff like that, they see the New Deal programs, especially if they help them, as being positive, and they'll be more on those New Deal liberal side. If you grew up with Ronald Reagan and those types, you might see being conservative as more of a socially acceptable because that's what you grew up with. So when you really look at liberal and conservative aspects, you don't truly have to choose one. You can be in the middle. You don't have to be liberal or conservative. And probably the biggest thing with this is to not influx your views on someone unless they feel like actually talking and hearing your views. It's something that is hard to do because human beings want to influence other people, but at the same time, letting somebody find their way, but like guiding them with factual information is the biggest part of this. Because I will say that there is a lot of misleading headlines and unfactual information that's out there that paints Democrats in a bad light and paints Republicans in a bad light. So you just have to be vigilant and understanding of what you're looking at and while you're shaping your views. And don't be afraid to say, hey, these are my views and you're not going to change them. So make sure you guys get your Supreme Court work done. If you guys want to, if you need to, message me. We can Google Meet tomorrow at a point in time, and we can go over stuff with that assignment. So if not, I will not podcast to you guys tomorrow. But if you guys like this, then I'll keep doing this. If not, I'll just go back to voice. If you really don't care, then whatever. I'll just do either one of them. But have a good weekend, and I will see you guys later.